From the time they were children, the difference between Zola and Nia always seemed visible to everyone except Zola's father. In the middle of a bright school courtyard filled with laughter and running children, the two sisters stood side by side beneath the warm afternoon sun, but even then, attention naturally drifted toward Nia, the slimmer, more outgoing sister who seemed to attract praise without effort, while Zola remained slightly off to the side, smiling quietly and pretending not to notice the way people overlooked her. Teachers praised Nia openly, classmates gathered around her laughing and admiring her confidence, and in the middle of those moments, young Zola often stood blurred in the background watching silently, her small smile hiding emotions she did not yet know how to explain. At home, it became harder to ignore. Their mother constantly celebrated Nia's beauty, fixing her hair proudly, smiling warmly at her accomplishments, and speaking about elegance in ways that slowly taught Zola something dangerous without ever saying it directly. One evening at the dinner table, Zola reached carefully toward another serving of food, only to notice the subtle look from her mother that made her slowly pull her hand back in hesitation, embarrassment quietly settling across her face, until her father calmly placed the food back onto her plate with a warm smile and said softly, "Eat, baby girl, never apologize for being cared for." Zola forced a smile in response, but even as a child, sadness still lingered quietly in her eyes. As the years passed, Zola slowly learned how to disappear emotionally before anyone else had the chance to push her aside. She spent evenings alone in her bedroom beneath dim lighting, sitting quietly on the edge of her bed while the sounds of the house faded into the background, and over time, she developed the habit of standing in front of mirrors only long enough to adjust oversized clothes before quickly avoiding her own reflection. By adulthood, hiding had become second nature. She walked through life in loose unfitted outfits that concealed her shape, keeping her head slightly lowered while crowds moved around her unnoticed, while Nia entered every social space with effortless confidence, drawing attention almost instantly the moment she appeared. The pattern repeated itself so many times that Zola eventually stopped expecting anything different. Whenever someone showed genuine interest in her, it never lasted long. One evening during a social gathering, a man struck up a polite conversation with Zola, catching her slightly off guard because she was unaccustomed to being noticed first. But moments later Nia stepped effortlessly into the interaction, laughing warmly while touching the man's arm, and just like always, the attention slowly shifted away from Zola until she found herself standing alone once again while they drifted deeper into the crowd without her. Later that night, surrounded by people but emotionally distant from all of them, Zola sat quietly in the corner of another gathering while conversations and laughter unfolded around her, her expression calm on the surface but emotionally withdrawn underneath, as though she had already accepted invisibility as part of her identity. Then one night, everything quietly began to change. Zola entered an upscale lounge wearing another modest oversized outfit, her braided high-top bun neat and practical, her posture reserved as she stepped carefully into the warm glow of the room. She sat alone at a small table, calm but guarded, expecting the night to pass like every other night before it, until across the room, Elijah noticed her. Unlike everyone else, he did not glance at her briefly before looking away. He watched her with quiet curiosity, his attention steady and sincere, and eventually, Zola looked up and met his eyes for the first time. The connection lasted only a moment, but something about it unsettled her in a way she could not explain. A few minutes later, Elijah walked toward her calmly and introduced himself, and what began as a simple conversation somehow felt different from every interaction Zola had experienced before. For the first time, someone was listening to her without distraction. As the evening came to an end, they parted ways calmly beneath the soft city lights, but neither of them forgot the interaction. Days later, Zola unexpectedly ran into Elijah again at an outdoor cafe on a warm afternoon, and the surprise on her face softened into cautious curiosity as they sat together talking more comfortably this time. Their conversations continued naturally over several meetings, sometimes walking side by side through quiet streets beneath golden evening light, other times sitting together in bookstores, cafes, and lounges where the world around them slowly faded into the background while they spoke for hours. Little by little, Zola began relaxing around him. She gestured more while speaking, laughed more freely, and stopped carefully monitoring every word that left her mouth. And Elijah noticed every shift. One evening during a quiet conversation, Elijah looked at her seriously and said something that stayed with her long after the night ended. "You spend so much energy trying not to be seen," he told her softly, "that you don't realize how much of yourself the world is missing." The words unsettled her because deep down, she knew they were true. That night, Zola stood in front of her mirror longer than ever before, staring at herself quietly beneath soft lighting, not with shame this time, but with honesty. The next day, she entered a clothing store and hesitated while holding a fitted dress against herself, uncertainty and curiosity battling silently inside her chest. For most of her life, she had dressed to disappear, but now, for the first time, she wondered what it would feel like to stop hiding. The change did not happen overnight. The first time Zola stepped outside in fitted clothes, her body felt tense, her eyes aware of every glance around her, but she kept walking anyway. Slowly, her posture improved. Her shoulders relaxed. Her stride steadied. Day by day, her confidence grew, not because her body changed, but because the way she saw herself finally began to change. People started noticing her differently, and even Nia could sense the shift happening before anyone else fully understood it. Zola carried herself differently now. Calm, present, grounded, no longer apologizing for existing. Eventually, everything led to one final elegant event filled with soft music, glowing lights, expensive dresses, and carefully controlled smiles. But the moment Zola entered the room in a deep red fitted dress with soft defined curls framing her face, the entire atmosphere subtly shifted. Conversations slowed, heads turned, attention moved naturally toward her without effort, and across the room, Nia saw immediately that something was different. Elijah saw it too. As Zola walked calmly through the crowd, people moved aside naturally, and for the first time in her life, she did not shrink beneath attention. But then Nia made one final attempt to reclaim control of the moment, stepping confidently into the space between Zola and Elijah while the surrounding room slowly fell silent around them. Guests paused mid-conversation. Drinks remained suspended in hands. Everyone watched quietly as tension settled across the room. And in the middle of that silence, Zola remained calm. "You can take attention," she said softly, her voice steady and clear, "but you can't take what was never yours." The room stayed still. Then Elijah finally spoke. Looking first toward Nia and then back at Zola, he said quietly, "You were the only one who never tried to be seen, and that's exactly why I saw you." For the first time, Nia understood. Not with anger, not with humiliation, but with quiet realization. What nobody else in the room knew was that months earlier, Zola's father had once spoken privately with Elijah away from the crowd beneath warm golden lights, telling him gently, "Don't rush to save her. She has spent her whole life believing she was less. If you truly care for her, let her learn who she is without that fear." And Elijah listened. He never tried to rescue Zola. He simply stayed steady while she slowly learned how to stand fully in herself. Months later, beneath glowing evening lights surrounded by flowers, candles, fairy lights, and a beautiful, "Will you marry me?" sign, Elijah gathered both families together for a surprise proposal. As Zola stepped into the breathtaking garden setup, emotion overwhelmed her instantly, and when Elijah slowly knelt before her with the ring in his hand, she covered her mouth in disbelief while her father smiled proudly nearby and even Nia watched warmly from the background. This time, instead of shrinking away from love, Zola confidently extended her left hand toward him, and Elijah gently slipped the ring onto her finger with a smile filled with certainty and peace. Later, in the quiet warmth of home, Nia and their mother finally apologized sincerely to Zola, no longer blinded by comparison or appearances, and instead of bitterness, Zola met them with grace. The three women embraced emotionally, years of silent hurt dissolving slowly into healing, accountability, and forgiveness. By the time the wedding day arrived, peace had fully replaced the tension that once divided them. Beneath warm golden lights and candlelit floral aisles, Zola walked slowly toward Elijah beside her father, her wedding gown glowing softly while pride filled her father's eyes. At the altar, Elijah looked at her not as someone who needed fixing, changing, or shrinking, but as someone already worthy of love exactly as she was, and when he gently slipped the wedding ring onto her finger, Zola smiled with complete emotional security for the first time in her life. Later that evening, the entire family stood together for one final wedding portrait. Zola, Elijah, Nia, their mother, and their father, no division left between them, only love, healing, and peace. And as Zola stood quietly beneath the warm glow of the evening, her fingers resting gently against her wedding ring, one final truth settled softly into her heart. For years, she believed love would only arrive after she became smaller, quieter, easier to accept. But in the end, she was loved fully, completely, exactly as she was.